There's an unwritten rule in professional sports that most people inside the industry understand without it ever being spelled out. The front office controls the message. The players play the game. And when the cameras come on after a tough loss or a frustrating stretch of games, everyone sticks to the script. You thank the fans, you talk about growing as a team, you mention the process, and you walk away without giving the media anything to run with. It's a system built on control. And for the most part, it works, until someone decides they're done playing along. That's exactly what happened with the Indiana Fever, and the person who lit the fuse was Sophie Cunningham. To fully appreciate why Cunningham's comments hit the way they did, you need to understand the atmosphere surrounding the Indiana Fever heading into this moment. For several weeks, General Manager Amber Cox had been in full crisis management mode.
Wow! Wow! No, she did. No, she didn't just say that. Wow! So she said she got a shot in her elbow, right? Sophie Cunningham is embarrassing the Fever front office before our eyes.
To understand, she was making the rounds with media outlets, issuing carefully worded statements, and doing everything in her power to project an image of organizational stability. The message being pushed from the front office was consistent. The physical play Caitlin Clark was experiencing on the court was just a normal part of professional basketball. The coaching staff had things under control. The organization was doing everything it could to protect its most valuable and visible player. Don't worry. Everything is fine. It was a polished, professional, and entirely predictable response. Sponsors needed reassurance. The league was watching. And with Caitlin Clark drawing more national attention than almost any player in women's basketball history, the last thing the Fever organization wanted was for the story to become about mismanagement or a failure to protect their star. So the PR machine ran at full speed. Amber Cox did her job. She stayed composed, stayed on message, and presented the face of a franchise that had everything under control. There was just one problem. The players actually living that reality every single night weren't seeing the same picture. When you're the one absorbing hard fouls, when you're the one watching your teammate get knocked to the floor and seeing officials swallow their whistles, no amount of polished language from a general manager changes what your body is feeling or what your eyes are seeing.
Somebody said, look at Kelsey Mitchell's face. Kelsey Mitchell was praying to God Sophie Cunningham didn't say nothing wrong. I peep. Hey, look, I did peep her face. I did peep Kelsey's face. Where's the time marker? We had 37 seconds. So look at Kelsey's face here. So Kelsey, hold on. Kelsey, right? Kelsey is praying to God Sophie don't say nothing wrong. Don't say nothing that's going to get you fired.
The players on the Indiana Fever were experiencing something that couldn't be smoothed over with a press release. The frustration inside that locker room had been building. Anyone watching closely enough could sense it. The Fever had been dealing with the kind of physical pressure that comes with being one of the most talked about and targeted teams in the league. Being in the spotlight means opponents come at you harder. It means you carry the weight of enormous expectations while also dealing with the physical grind of a long professional season. That kind of pressure doesn't evaporate because the GM gave a reassuring interview. It builds, it festers, and eventually someone says something. Sophie Cunningham was always going to be that someone. When the Indiana Fever brought Sophie Cunningham onto the roster, they knew exactly what they were getting. She's a fiercely competitive player who wears her emotions on her sleeve. She plays with an edge that most teams desperately want in their locker room. She's the kind of player who doesn't back down from physical confrontations and who holds her teammates accountable in ways that matter. She was brought in specifically to add toughness and fire to a group that needed both. In many ways, she has delivered exactly that. She's become one of the most talked about players in the league not just because of what she does on the court, but because of the energy she brings to everything around it. But bringing in someone with that level of competitive intensity is a double-edged sword. You can't ask a player to be fiercely protective of her teammates on the court and then expect her to quietly accept the corporate version of events off it. Sophie Cunningham is not built that way. And the front office may have underestimated just how far she was willing to take that role when the cameras pointed her way. When Cunningham stepped up to the media, nobody was expecting what came next. These post-game and practice day press conferences usually follow a predictable rhythm.
Allowed you all to pull away.
I mean, I think we did that to ourselves. We had 11 missed layups. We had 11 turnovers in the first half, and we were kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. And honestly, we've kind of been doing that all year, but I think everyone's starting to see our growth. We came out in the second half, and we played great defense. We kind of valued the ball a little bit more, and you saw the ball was popping. Everyone was kind of getting their hands on it. And so I'm just proud of us, and we finally put the pedal to the metal a little bit, and I think we all felt that as a whole.
One thing about Sophie, she's always going to bring up
them. Players offer measured takes, credit their opponents, talk about what they need to improve, and head back to the locker room. It's almost formulaic. Sophie threw the formula out the window. She looked directly into the cameras and started talking in a way that felt entirely different from anything the Fever organization had been putting out publicly. She spoke about the physical demands of the season with real, unfiltered honesty. She addressed the lack of consistent protection from league officiating. She didn't hedge or qualify her words to protect anyone's feelings. But the moment that truly resonated was when she made it clear without ambiguity that the players felt the front office wasn't doing enough to support them. Not in general terms, not in vague PR language. She made it personal and she made it pointed. The implication was unmistakable. While Amber Cox had been telling the basketball world that everything was handled, the people inside that locker room were feeling the opposite. The reaction was immediate. Fans watching her body language, her tone, the way she spoke without hesitation or second-guessing herself, it was electric. This wasn't a player reading from a prepared script. This was a player who had genuinely had enough and was no longer willing to pretend otherwise. Part of what gave Cunningham's comments such weight was what had reportedly been happening behind the scenes.
I want to look at real quick before we get into some more of this basketball game today is Caitlin Clark earlier press conference. I don't know if you guys got to watch it. I want to show it to you guys here and let you guys know exactly what Caitlin Clark said about these shoes and about everything.
You had your friendship bracelets today with the Caitlin ones and 10-126.
Oh,
Do
you
have
zoomed
anything
in.
to share on the
10-126. Mark your calendars, I guess, huh?
This moment shifts.
Felt true. It felt honest. It felt like what a real player would actually think and feel after weeks of physical play and institutional messaging that didn't match lived reality. If the front office moved against Cunningham in any punitive way, it would instantly be interpreted as the organization prioritizing its own image over the well-being of its players. It would confirm exactly what Sophie was implying, that the front office cares more about controlling the narrative than protecting the people representing them on the court. The optics would be catastrophic, so Cox is left with limited options. She can absorb the hit, quietly let it pass, and hope the story fades. She can try to get ahead of it by publicly acknowledging the team's frustrations and pledging more tangible support. Or she can dig in and continue running the same playbook, accepting that the credibility gap between the front office messaging and what players are saying publicly will only grow wider. What's been underappreciated in the broader conversation is what this moment does for Sophie Cunningham standing inside the Indiana Fever locker room. Being willing to step in front of cameras, take on the organizational machine, and say the things that everyone else is thinking but nobody else is willing to say, that earns enormous respect from teammates. The rest of the roster is watching. They're seeing someone go to bat for them in a very public and very real way. They're seeing someone absorb the PR consequences, take the attention and shield the rest of the team, especially Caitlin Clark, from having to wade into that kind of controversy during a demanding season. That's leadership. That's the kind of thing that builds genuine chemistry in a locker room, not team-building exercises or motivational speeches from the coaching staff. When players know that one of their own will speak up for them, it changes the dynamic. It creates trust. It creates unity. And ironically, it may do more for the Indiana Fever's chances of competing than any organizational statement ever could. The significance of what Sophie Cunningham did extends well beyond Indiana. Across the WNBA, players are watching the situation.
Your shoe and, for young boys and young girls to be able to, hopefully want to wear it and be able to put it on and, dream. You don't have to be a basketball player, but dream to achieve whatever you want. And I think that's what I hope people feel when they put the shoe on. And also that's really comfortable and it looks pretty cool too. But that it kind of gives them a superpower and they, feel like they can express themselves through the shoe. And I feel like that's kind of what it's been for me so far. Obviously, that's what I'm going to take into wearing my signature. But even when
Now the basketball world is watching to see how Amber
Carefully. For a long time, the accepted norm has been that players operate within the framework that teams and the league set for them publicly. You represent the brand, you support the organizational messaging, you don't rock the boat. Cunningham just demonstrated that model is changing. By stepping up and holding her own front office publicly accountable, and by having a significant portion of the fan base cheer her for it, she's shown every athlete in the league how much power they actually hold. The media wants player voices. Fans connect with authentic emotion far more readily than they connect with institutional PR. Players are central to the product, and they have every right to use that leverage to demand better conditions, better protection, and better organizational support. This moment will be referenced in conversations about player voice and locker room dynamics in the WNBA for a long time. Sophie Cunningham pulled back the curtain, and she did it in a way that was impossible to look away from. The basketball world is now watching to see how this story develops. The immediate question is how Amber Cox responds. Does she set aside the instinct to protect the organization's image and acknowledge, even partially, that the front office could and should do more for its players? Does she find a way to publicly back Sophie's passion rather than quietly distancing herself from the controversy? Or does she stick to the same script and let the tension simmer, hoping it doesn't boil over at a critical moment in the season? The best organizational leaders understand that some tension is healthy. A locker room with genuine fire and a willingness to push back against complacency is almost always more effective than one that quietly accepts whatever it's handed.
Answer more when I start wearing them.
Last week it was, you had a little girl come up and just wrap herself around your leg.
Yeah.
What do you just remember about that moment? And I guess, how does it speak to just the legacy that you're already leaving as a player?
Yeah, it was a very cute moment. I think we had just come off, honestly, maybe our Portland loss. And I think it was like one of those moments where it's like, dang, like young boys and young girls, they don't care. Like, if you win or lose, they don't care how many points you score.
Back
The
against
fallout from this
complacency
moment is going to
almost
fuel
always more effective than one that quietly accepts whatever it's handed. The challenge is channeling that energy productively rather than letting it become a distraction. The Indiana Fever have something genuinely special building right now. Caitlin Clark drawing the kind of attention that transcends sports. A supporting cast that's fighting and scrapping every night. And now a player in Sophie Cunningham who has become, almost overnight, one of the most compelling figures in the league, not just because of her game but because of her willingness to say what everyone else was thinking. The storylines are real, the emotions are real, the stakes keep climbing, and the drama isn't manufactured for television, it's playing out in real time with real consequences for everyone involved. Sophie Cunningham grabbed the microphone and reminded everyone that the players aren't just performers in someone else's story. They're the story, and right now she's writing the most interesting chapter of it. The front office set out to control the narrative. Sophie Cunningham just reminded them that they were never fully in control to begin with.